أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك العالى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أهوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تعثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله العلي العظيم.
محمد وعلى محمد بلند الصلوات اللهم
اللهم
صل
صل
على
على محمد
محمد
وعلى
وعلى محمد. کہا رو کے باقر نے عابد سے بابا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. کہا رو کے باقر نے عابد سے بابا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. ہے بابا یہاں پر بلا کا اندھیرا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. کہا رو کے باقر نے عابد سے بابا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. ہاں دیکھا ہے میں نے سفر میں یہ منظر جہاں پانی ہوتا تھا اس کو میسر تو خود اپنے حصے کا پانی ہمیشہ گراتی تھی یہ آپ کی بیڑیوں پر. میسر ہے اب ہم کو پانی تو پیاسا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. کہا رو کے باقر نے عابد سے بابا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. جھکائے ہوئے اپنا سر رو رہی ہے رہائی کی سن کر خبر رو رہی ہے. تڑپتی ہے دادی ربا ویسے بابا کہ اماں بھی تھامے جگر رو رہی ہے. بتائیں گے کیا گر انہوں نے یہ پوچھا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. کہا رو کے باقر نے عابد سے بابا سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں. مجھے یاد ہے خود یہ کہتے تھے دادا مدینہ ہے اس کے سبب سے مدینہ کہ میری نظر میں وہ گھر ہی نہیں ہے، نظر جس میں آئے نہ مجھ کو سکینہ، نہ اس کے بنا پھر بسے گا مدینہ، سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں، کہا رو کہ با کے نیابے سے بابا، سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں۔ مجھے آج یاد آ رہا ہے وہ لمحہ، گری تھی جو ناکے سے ایک دن سکینہ، لگے آپ کی پشت پر تازیاں نے، مگر آپ نے قافلہ روک کے رکھا، رکا لیں یوں ہی قافلہ آج بابا، سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں، کہا رو کہ باکر نیابے سے بابا، سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں۔ اچانک نگاہیں پڑی جو لحد پر، سوالات پھر لب پہ آئے نہ اکبر، سکینہ کی تربت کو سینے لگائے، پدر سے یہ کہنے لگے رو کے باکر، سمجھ میں میری اب ہے بابا یہ آیا، سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں، کہا رو کہ با کے نیابے سے بابا، سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں، سکینہ کو کیوں چھوڑ کر جا رہے ہیں۔ اور محمد والے محمد بلندر صلوات۔
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم.
فاتحہ۔ چہلم جو کربلا میں 72 کا ہو چکا، چہلم جو کربلا میں 72 کا ہو چکا، پیوند بے کسوں کے تنو سر کا ہو چکا، اور فاتحہ حسین کے لشکر کا ہو چکا، قبروں پہ شور آل پیمبر کا ہو چکا، قبروں پہ شور آل پیمبر کا ہو چکا، ماتم میں 3 روز رہے شور و شین سے، روئے لپٹ لپٹ مزارے حسین سے، مثل چراغ گورے غریباں پہ دل جلائے پھولوں کے بدلے قبروں پہ لختے جگر چڑھائے، پیاروں کی بود و باش کے سامان جو یاد آئے، بے ساختہ پکارے گلے جا پکڑ کے ہائے، بے ساختہ پکارے گلے جا پکڑ کے ہائے، کنبے کے ساتھ داخلہ کربلا ہوا، لایا جو تھا مدینے سے ہم کو، کیا ہوا کنبے کے ساتھ داخلہ کربلا ہوا، لایا جو تھا مدینے سے ہم کو، وہ کیا ہوا، حضرت کی قبر ہل گئی، زینب کے بین سے آ کر کہا بشیر نے ابن حسین سے، شہزاد جاں بلب ہے پھوپھی شو روشن سے، چلیے وطن کو قبر شہ مشرفین سے، عابد نے پوچھا کیوں پھوپھی اماں قبول ہے، وہ بولی اختیار ہے کیا، ہاں قبول ہے، آئے تھے کس طرح سے وطن کے، اس طرح چلے نہ شہر رہے نہ گودیوں میں گود کے پلے، سوتے تھے قبر میں جو کٹائے ہوئے گلے، یہ وقت وہ تھا پھرتے تھے سب آنکھ کے تلے، عابد سے بانو کہتی تھی مہلت قلیل ہے، کچھ خاک پاک لے لو کہ صغرا علی ہے، اے کربلائے سرورے دلگیر الوداع، اے قتل گاہ حضرت شبیر الوداع، اے قبر ابن صاحب تطہیر الوداع، اے بھائی جان جاتی ہے ہمشیر الوداع، اے بھائی جان جاتی ہے ہمشیر الوداع، کیا غم نصیب ہے یہ نواسی رسول کی، تم نے مجاوری نہ ہماری قبول کی، کیا غم نصیب ہے یہ نواسی رسول کی، تم نے مجاوری نہ ہماری قبول کی، چہلم جو کربلا میں، درود پر محمد و آل محمد، اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد.
الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين، والذين اذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الإمام علي بن موسى الرضا رحم الله عبدا أحيا أمرنا، صدق ولي الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. As we approach the Arbaeen of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, an important date which we pass by and we befittingly pass by is the date of the martyrdom and the shahada of our eighth Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. You see, this Imam was linked with his grandfather Sayyid al-Shuhada, apart just from being from the lineage of Imam al-Hussein. We have tradition after tradition that when it comes to the Aza and the mourning of Sayyid al-Shuhada, a great bulk of the riwayat and the traditions we have emphasizing the importance of mourning over Imam al-Hussein, a great number of these traditions, they come from the eighth Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha alayhi salam. For example, it is stated that on the first of Muharram, Imam al-Ridha, he sees his companion by the name of Rayhan ibn Shabib. Imam al-Ridha says to him, O ibn Shabib, do you not know that the moon of Muharram has been sighted? And he says, O ibn Shabib, in kunta bakiyan ala shay'in fabki lil Hussein ibn Ali. That, O son of Shabib, if you ever want to cry over anything, then cry over my grandfather Hussein. This Imam al-Rida, time and time again, he emphasized the mourning of his grandfather, and it's the beauty and the power of mourning for the musibah and the masayib of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, that year in and year out, though the musibah it doesn't change, though the stories and the incidents are the same to us, but year in and year out, we're able to mourn. Year in, year out, our hearts are able to connect. What is the sir behind this? What is the secret behind this? You see, one of the secrets lies in the fact that these imams were individuals who were gharib. Gharib not in the sense that it carries in Urdu and Persian of being poor, but no, gharib in Arabic means to be alone. That there were people in the society that didn't understand them, and there were people in the society that didn't support them. But out of all of these ai the one who was the most alone out of all of them was Imam al-Rida Gharibul Ghuraba, the most alone of the alone. You see, I said that the secret behind the fact that year in, year out, though the musibah doesn't change, the masaib doesn't change, but our hearts are able to connect, we find the answer to this in a tradition. And that is that tradition which says gharibun yabki ala gharibin. That only a person who is gharib can mourn over somebody who is gharib. You see, that facet is there. That you and I, we face trial, we face tribulation, we face challenges, we face hardships. But Ahlul Bayt are those folks, Ahlul Bayt are those people that every challenge we face, they understand the challenge. And every trial we face, they face greater trials. And out of all of these Ahlul Bayt, as I mentioned, Imam al-Ridha was called Gharib al-Ghuraba, the most alone of the alone. Why is Imam al-Ridha called Gharib al-Ghuraba? Yes, one aspect of this was the historical factor that the Imam was forced to move from Medina towards Khurasan. You know, when the Imam was leaving Medina, Al-Muhawil al-Sijistani was a narrator who lived in Medina. He says, I would look at the grandson of the Prophet, at Imam al-Rida, and as Imam al-Rida was leaving Medina, Imam al-Rida would walk to the grave of Rasulullah, he would walk away from the grave of Rasulullah. He would walk to the grave of Rasulullah and he would walk away from the grave of Rasulullah. I said to him, O grandson of the Prophet, this is an honor for you that Ma'mun, the caliph of the time, is calling you. But no, Imam al-Rida would say, this is my exile from Medina. So you find from one aspect, this Imam was Gharib al-Ghuraba because he had to leave Medina. But no, another aspect is there. And that aspect is that every Imam is buried by another Imam or by another individual. When you go towards Najaf, for example, Imam Ali is buried by Nabi Nuh, Nabi Adam. When you go towards Karbala, Sayyid al-Shuhada is buried by Aba Fadl Abbas and the rest of the martyrs. When you go to Qadmain, there are two Imams, Imam Musa al-Qadim, Imam Muhammad al-Jawad. When you go to Samara, there are two Imams, Imam Ali al-Hadi, Imam Hassan al-Askari. When you go to Baqi, there are multiple Imams. But no, there is one lonely grave in Khurasan, and that is the grave of Imam al-Rida. You see, this entire majlis is about the life and the times of Imam al-Rida and the virtues of this Imam. Because at least one day a year, even though the Imam has a greater haqq, but at least on the days of the birth of the Imam and the days of the shahadat and the martyrdom of an Imam, we at the very minimum should make an effort to understand who these individuals were, what the circumstances of their lives were, and to move in this direction, I offer this humble lecture and this majlis in order that we can come to some sort of understanding about who Imam al-Rida was and how we can connect with this Imam of ours. You see, the ziyarah of Imam al-Rida at the first level has been emphasized in a manner which is particularly unique. You know, oftentimes when people they recite ziyarah in the mosque, after they send salam upon Imam al-Hussein, they'll recite the ziyarah of Imam al-Rida. Now, it is emphasized that we should mention all of the Aimma. That when you recite your ziyarah, we should mention all of the Aimma. But the ziyarah of Imam al-Rida is a unique ziyarah in what sense? And there is a hadith from the son of Imam al-Rida, and of course Imam al-Rida only had one son, Imam Muhammad al-Jawad. Imam al-Jawad, he says when it comes to the other Aimma, yazuruhum ammatan wa khassa, that the general group of the Shia and the exclusive group, they do their ziyarah. But when it comes to the ziyarah of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam, we say within that ziyarah, Mawlaya anta alladhi la yazuruka illa al-khawas min al-Shia. You know what this line means? That none does your visitation except for the exclusive from amongst the Shia. You know, may Allah grant you the ziyarah of our A'imma in Iraq. When you go towards Najaf, when you go towards Karbala, when you go and look at ziyarah, it's not only the Twelvers who are doing the ziyarah of Imam Ali. It's not only the Twelvers and the Itna Ashari who are doing the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein. You'll see that the Bohra, they come for the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, the Ismaili, they come for that ziyarah. The Zaydiya, they come for the ziyarah. But what is unique about the ziyarah of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida is that the one who does the ziyarah of the 8th Imam will believe all the way towards the 12th Imam. And what I mean by this line is that there were many groups and factions and denominations amongst the Shia. Some of them they believed up towards, for example, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. Others, such as the Waqifiyya, they stopped at Imam Musa al-Kadhim. But no, whoever believed in the 8th Imam, the one who reached the 8th of Ali Muhammad, he reaches the 12th of Ali Muhammad. This is why within the Hadith, we have the title and we have the idea and the principle of Hujajur Radawiyya, the proofs of Imam al-Ridha. You see, within the life and the circumstances of Imam al-Ridha, there was a world in that time period which was developing. A world, in one sense, which was a global village. A world of dialogue and discussion and an exchange of thought, and in many ways similar to the time that we are living in today. You see, in Imam al-Rida's time, one of the elements of the Abbasid government is that the Abbasid government, they began a program of translating the texts from the other nations into Arabic. So, for example, you would find that the ancient texts of the Greeks would be translated into Arabic. The texts of the Romans would be translated into Arabic. Different works were brought in from Cyrus and different places, and they would be translated into Arabic. Now, when they were translated into Arabic, there was a new exchange of thought going on. There were many new ideas that were coming up, and there were many theological discussions and debates that were going on. You see, in the court of Ma'mun, Imam al-Rida, Ma'mun would bring different people of different faiths, and Imam al-Rida would discuss with them. And from the Imam, we would see the manifestation of the verse, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal mau'idati al-hasana," that invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and that manner which is best. You see, when you invite others to the deen of Allah, to the path of Allah, whether it is somebody who is within your community or outside of your community, it's not just you go and you tell them the task and this is how it is. But no, the Quran, it says that when you invite someone, invite them in that manner which is best and invite them with wisdom. Oftentimes, the way we call people, it may deter them away from the deen. But no, there must be a principle, there must be understanding, and this understanding we gain from the traditions of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, from the traditions of Imam al-Rida. You know, on the subject of inviting others, Imam al-Rida would say that Rahimallahu abdan ahya amrana, that may Allah have mercy upon that servant who re-enlivens our affairs. It's stated when Imam al-Rida alayhi salam said this. The narrator says to the Imam, "O Imam, how do we re-enliven your affairs?" Imam al-Rida replies by saying, "Yata'allamu ulumana wa yu'allimuha an-nas," that learn our knowledge and teach it to the people. فَإِنَّ النَّاسَ لَوْ عَلِمُوا مَحَاسِنَ كَلَامِنَا لَاتَّبَعُونَا. The Imam would say that if the people, they knew the beauty of our narrations and our traditions, they would undoubtedly follow us. You see, Ahlul Bayt gave a principle that make an effort, learn the hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, that if you don't understand what the hadith is saying, there are so many avenues within today's world, that there have been lectures which have been given about various ahadith. There are scholars and speakers you can connect with in your community who can give you some form of an insight, and further than that, there have been many books which have been written about commenting upon these hadith. But Ahlul Bayt, they say that learn our traditions, tell our traditions to other individuals, and when you tell that towards them, you don't have to do anything else. We will let our traditions do the work. You know, you've heard of that book about Imam Ali by a Lebanese Christian by the name of George Jordak. That book was called Sawtul Adalat al-Insaniya, that Imam Ali is the voice of human justice. But the reason George Jordak, he came close to Imam Ali, he came to be in love with Imam Ali, is that he says he had a friend, and that friend gave a copy of Nahj al-Balagha. He says, when I read this book, I didn't understand why Ali is saying this. And he was speaking about a scientific matter. But later on, as I was watching television, I saw the same thing which science established today, Ali bin Abi Talib was speaking about. He says, from that moment to the end of my life, I have read Nahjul Balagha 40 times. And each time I have learned something which I didn't learn before. So you see, this is the power that Imam al-Ridha says, that learn our knowledge and give it to other individuals. Our hadith and our narrations will do the work. And this was from amongst the teaching of Imam al-Ridha. Now there is so much to say about this Imam. There are so many aspects of his life that I can go into. But to organize the discussion, I'll only discuss on a number of stages. Number one, I'll examine who the mother of Imam al-Ridha was. Number two, I'll examine what the characteristics of Imam al-Ridha were. Number three, I'll examine in which manner the Imam moved from Medina to Khurasan. Number four, I'll examine some of the debates of Imam al-Ridha in the court of Ma'mun. Number five, I'll examine which way Imam al-Ridha emphasized the aza and the mourning of his grandfather Sayyid al-Shuhada, particularly in the form of poetry. And we'll discuss upon these 5 points, and I won't make the discussion too complicated or the discussion away from the subject matter, in order that we in a concise way can gain some sort of understanding about the life and the times of our Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha alayhi salatu wassalam. So the first angle of discussion is the discussion pertaining to who the mother of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha was. You see, in historical analysis, we say that the backdrop of an individual has a profound impact upon the upbringing of the individual. Of course, the father of Imam al-Ridha is an infallible Imam. But when it comes to the mothers of the A'imma alayhimus salam, you find that the mothers of the Imams had a special status. And this special status can be seen in Ziyaratul Waritha. When we say about Sayyid al-Shuhada, and this can apply to the other Imams as well, أشهد أنك نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها. That, O Hussein, I bear witness that you were in the most sublime of loins, and you were in the most purified of wombs. Those wombs that the impurity of ignorance, it didn't touch them. You see, that when it came to the mothers of the Imams, that each of these Imams, their mothers were the best of the women of that time period. And if they weren't in Medina, the Imams would go and they would bring them, whether it was from Abyssinia, whether it was from Morocco, whether it was from Rome, or whether it was from Persia. But the shart and the condition is that they were the best women of their time periods. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, that the most honored is the most conscious of God, and you find this reality. Now, who was the mother of Imam al-Ridha? You see, the hadith, they differ about what the name of the mother of the Imam was. For example, Shaykh al-Mufid in Kitab al-Irshad would say that the mother of the Imam, her name was Najma. The tradition from Bihar al-Anwar would say that her name is Arwah. But we have another tradition which says that her name was Tuqtam. And in the way that the historians, they differ about what the name of the mother of Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam was, they differ also about who the mother of the Imam was. For example, in a hadith from the famous book Uyun Akhbar al-Ridha, which was a book compiled by the famous narrator Sheikh as-Saduq, about all of the hadith that Imam al-Ridha has narrated, within this book, he says that the mother of Imam al-Ridha, Tuqtam, was the servant of the wife of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, Hamida. But we have another tradition, which is not only found in Uyun Akhbar al-Ridha, but it is also found in Al-Kafi and Kashf al-Ghumma, and it's found in more sources. And the story behind this tradition is that it states that when Imam Musa al-Kadhim, he heard that a group of people were brought from Morocco from Maghrib. He goes with his companion. He says, I have heard that the people of Morocco have come. So he says to his companion that let us go and see who they have brought. When they go over there, the man says that I have brought 9 slave girls. Imam Musa al-Kadhim says, no, one is missing. He says, yes, there is one more, but I won't sell her towards you. I won't give her towards you. Imam Musa al-Kadhim, he goes away. He says to his companion that pay this man whatever he asked for that slave girl. When the man he goes, the man agrees to a price. He says, but answer one question. Who was that man that came with you? You find that they reply by saying that that man was from Banu Hashim, from the best of Banu Hashim. That man, he says, that when we brought this girl from Morocco, we heard the women of the Christians and the Jews would say that she is the most pure lady that we have seen. You see, this was the mother of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. When we see the virtues of Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, aside from the fact that he was a ma'soom imam, aside from the fact that his father is an imam and he's from the lineage of Rasulullah, you find that the mothers of the ai they played a great role on the lives of the imams as well. And from the role that the mother of Imam al-Ridha played, we see the characteristics within Imam al-Ridha. You see, when you look at the hadith, right, there are a number of characteristics and qualities and attributes we see of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. For example, in the hadith, they describe Imam al-Ridha, they describe him by saying that he is Imam al-Ra'uf, the Imam of kindness. Imam al-Ridha was called Imam al-Ra'uf, the leader of those who have kindness within their heart. You know, when Imam al-Ridha was made heir apparent by Ma'mun, when one was of the aristocracy of that time, they would take a private bath. And in that time period, there was a culture of the public baths where people, they would go bathe and clean themselves. It stated that Imam al-Ridha, he would never tell a servant to do anything for him. Imam al-Ridha would do all of his tasks himself, to the point that he would even go to the public bath. He wouldn't go and use that which was in the palace of Ma'mun. When Imam al-Ridha goes there one day, there was a soldier. That soldier, he says to Imam al-Ridha that wash my back. He didn't know who the Imam was. Imam al-Ridha begins to wash the back of that individual. When somebody else sees that man, they said, oh man, do you not realize this is the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad? This is the heir apparent of Ma'mun. That man, he becomes startled. He becomes fearful at that moment. You know what Imam al-Ridha replies by saying? Imam al-Ridha replies by saying that, oh man, don't worry. It is an honor for us to serve the creation of Allah. You see, an Imam is the one who had the highest status out of creation in his time period. But at the same time, he didn't say, I am the Imam, I am above you in that sense. I am the Imam, I am the one who is not going to serve you. Imam al-Ridha shows that a person, to reach the highest of statuses, one key part and element of the journey is the removal of the ego. And inshallah, tomorrow on the Arbaeen lecture, as I discuss the importance of the Arbaeen, I'll examine some of the aspects of the movement of Sayyid al-Shuhada from the lens of self-purification and mysticism, and I'll discuss this topic more in length tomorrow about how we can remove the ego and the veil from us via the message of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So we see this from Imam al-Ridha. This Imam was Imam al-Ra'uf. But no, another quality of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha alayhi salam is that in the life of Imam al-Ridha, we see the quality of generosity manifest. You see, generosity is something that really needs to be inculcated within our lives because it has a number of spiritual impacts. The first impact of generosity is that generosity lessens the love of the material world of the human being. Oftentimes, when we just accumulate and accumulate, God has given us the right to do so. But when you build in yourself a habit of giving towards others, these material attachments, which are temporary, these material attachments, they become weaker. And the spirit of a human being builds. So not only does giving and having generosity have a spiritual impact, as have a impact socially and around other individuals and benefit them, but it has a profound impact upon the spirit of a human being. And we see that from the lives of the Imams, our A'imma, they demonstrated the peak of generosity. It stated one day a man, he comes to Imam al-Ridha. That man, he says, I was in debt. It was the time of Ramadan. I went to the house of Imam al-Ridha. When I go towards his house, I'm waiting for him. And as I'm waiting, the time of Maghrib is coming. And I'm thirsty. And I'm hungry. And it's a hot day. So as I'm coming, I see that as Imam al-Ridha is walking to his house, all of the poor and the fuqara of Medina are surrounding Imam al-Ridha. Imam al-Ridha, he goes into his house, he calls me, he says to me that, oh man, come inside. He says, when I go inside, Imam al-Ridha said, are you hungry? Then eat from my food. And he says, after I finished the meal, I saw that the Imam had placed 48 coins in front of me. I only needed 28, but as I was looking through the coins, it was inscribed on one of them that 28 is your debt, 20 is a gift from us, Ali Muhammad. I remember one incident on the 11th of Muharram related to the subject of generosity. It stated on the 11th of Muharram that the army of Umar bin Sa'ad, they would look at the wounded body of Sayyid al-Shuhada and they would mention which wounds they inflicted on the body of the Imam. One man would say that I struck his shoulder. One man would say I cut his finger. One man would say I caused the wounds by the arrows. But they saw that the back of the Imam was bruised. They said, we don't know where these bruises came from. They called Imam Zainul Abidin. Imam Zainul Abidin, he says that these are those bruises that my father in the middle of the night, he would go and he would carry food to the needy and the poor of Medina. This is Hussein. This is the seerah of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. We need to reflect upon the seerah of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, because this isn't just a historical discussion for us. No, this is far beyond the realm of history. Because from them we see guidelines in our lives, we see practical solutions that how should we act when we want to move closer towards Allah. So Imam al-Rida has a number of qualities. We see that the quality of kindness is in the Imam. We see the quality of generosity is in the Imam. And then we also see that this Imam was called the Alim of Ali Muhammad, the scholar of Ali Muhammad. You see, a question comes up, is that why is Imam Ali alayhi salam not the Alim of Ali Muhammad? After all, Imam Ali is the one who says, Saluni, Saluni, qabla an tafkiduni, ask me before you lose me. Why is Imam Sadiq, who was famous for having 4,000 well-known students, not the Alim of Ali Muhammad? The answer is this, is that it is not a question of maqam and status, but rather it is a question of circumstances. In that time period, you find that in the court of Ma'mun, Imam al-Rida would answer 20,000 questions. And the books of hadith, they record the questions and the discussions the people would have with Imam al-Rida. And when you study and you read these discussions, you find that we come to understand that Imam al-Rida is that individual who was divinely inspired, that there was no way an ordinary individual could reply in the way that Imam al-Ridha replied. You see, one key feature of the life of the Imam is that within the time period of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, the Abbasid government, they wanted to establish their governance. And to establish their governance, right, they needed to have influence over the Persian bloc within the Muslim world. The Persian bloc, the non-Arab bloc and group of people in the Muslim world were called the Mawali. One of the key reasons why the Umayyads they fell is because these Mawali, and this shouldn't be confused with Mawali in the sense of being the Mawali of Amir al-Mu'mineen, but Mawali in this historical context means the non-Arabs living in the Muslim world. The Umayyads, they didn't give them any rights. So the part of the Abbasid movement was to use the emotions of the Mawali and these non-Arabs to put themselves in a position. And Ma'mun, he needed to establish his authority. So what did he do? He did is that number one, he moved the capital to Khorasan within Marv, within Persia. And the second thing he did is that he made Imam al-Ridha his heir apparent. Imam al-Ridha didn't want to accept the position, but he was forced into accepting it. But he says, okay, if I am going to be put in this position, then number one, I will not appoint anyone to office. Number two, I won't remove anyone from office. Number three, I won't pass a judgment. You know, if there was a judge, and that judge, he said, I'm going to take this position, but I won't give any verdicts. I won't give any rulings. You would say, why is he a judge? The reality is that Imam al-Ridha, though he was forced into a position, he was trying to distance himself from that methods of Ma'mun and the governance of Ma'mun. You see, when Ma'mun, he tells Imam al-Ridha to come from Medina to Khorasan, he gives his army special instructions. He says to them, don't allow anyone to see him, for anyone who sees him becomes his follower. Don't take him through the main route, for anyone who speaks to him becomes his follower. So they took him through a non-mashhur route, from a non-famous route. As they were taking the non-main route, Imam al-Ridha, he passes to the city of Nishapur. You know, it's stated, the works of history, the way they describe the scene in Nishapur is a beauty. It's stated that 20,000 individuals, when Imam al-Ridha was being taken, everyone had heard that Imam al-Ridha, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, is coming. So all of them, they would surround the camel of the Imam. Imam al-Ridha would be veiled within that, he would be veiled on the camel so the people couldn't see him. Imam al-Ridha, they would say to the Imam that, O grandson of the Prophet, give us one hadith from your grandfather. That it stated 20,000 individuals with pen and paper had gathered upon that day. Imam al-Ridha, he opens the curtain. Imagine seeing the grandson of the Prophet for the first time, the awe the people must have felt. Imam al-Ridha would say that I had heard from my father Musa al-Kadhim, who had heard from his father Ja'far al-Sadiq, who had heard from his father Muhammad al-Baqir, who had heard from his father Zainul Abidin, who had heard from his father Imam al-Hussein, who had heard from his brother Imam al-Hassan, who had heard from his father Ali bin Abi Talib, who had heard from Rasulullah, and Rasulullah says that Jibreel descended upon me, and Jibreel stated that Allah, he says, La ilaha illallah hisni, فَمَنْ دَخَلَ حِسْنِي آمِنَ مِنْ أَجَابِي, that La ilaha illallah is my fortress, the one who enters my fortress, he'll be safe from my punishment. You know, at that point, the people, they begin to think, that is that it? La ilaha illallah. Imam al-Ridha, he opens the curtain again. He says, وَلَكِنْ بِشُرُوطِهَا, but La ilaha illallah has conditions, وَأَنَا مِنْ شُرُوطِهَا, and I am one of the conditions of La ilaha illallah, that if one wants to reach a proper conception of Tawheed, then one cannot do so without belief in the Imam of the time. Now, this hadith can be analyzed from so many different angles, but it's been 35 minutes and my time is limited, and I want to share as much as we can possible about the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. That way you have a general sketch of the incidents of the life of Imam al-Ridha. Then inshallah in the future we can have more complex and in-depth discussions if God allows us to do so. So Imam al-Ridha in this manner, he's taken from Medina to Khurasan. When he comes to Khurasan, the servants of Ma'mun, they state that we won't show respect to this man. We won't stand up for this man. But it's stated when Imam al-Ridha walks into the court of Ma'mun, when they see the grandeur and the haiba on the face of Imam al-Ridha, they begin to stand up without realizing it. Imam al-Ridha in this manner, he goes to the court of Ma'mun. Ma'mun says, do you want to sit on the throne? Imam al-Ridha says, no, I won't sit on the throne. Bring me a mimbar, bring me a pulpit, because my grandfather Rasulullah didn't sit on a throne, he sat on a pulpit. You see, in this manner, when Imam al-Ridha he goes to Khurasan, the influence of Imam al-Ridha begins to increase. Ma'mun, he says to different individuals, he calls the different heads of the various faiths and the educated masses and elite of that time. Imam al-Ridha, for example, Ma'mun he would call Rasul Jalut the head rabbi. He would call Jatalik the head of the Catholics. He would call Nistaso Rumi, who was a famous Roman medical student, he would call the head of the Zoroastrians, he would call the head of the Hindus at that time, and he would say that I want you to go and debate my cousin Ali al-Ridha. And the reason I want you to debate him is because I want you to defeat him in a debate. Because by the time of Ma'mun, it had become famous that within the theology of the Shia, it was believed that the Imam must be more knowledgeable than the rest of creation. So Ma'mun wanted to show that this wasn't a reality. So he tells somebody, one of the servants of his, to go and bring Imam Ali al-Ridha. That servant had an inclination for the Imam, that he was from amongst the Shia of the Imam, and his name was Nofali. It stated when Nofali, he goes to Imam al-Ridha, Imam al-Ridha sees worry on his face. Imam al-Ridha says, Nofali, why are you worried? Nofali says, oh my master, I'm worried for you. Imam al-Ridha says, why are you worried for me? Nofali says, because Ma'mun has invited you to answer the questions of certain individuals. But they aren't individuals who are truly seeking knowledge. They are polemicists, and they are people who have only come to engage in debate. And these people who engage in debate, they are people who twist words. They are people who are not honest in their knowledge. You see, the goal of knowledge is not to impress other people with what you know. The goal of knowledge is not to learn so you can go and debate others. But no, the goal of knowledge is to gain nur within the heart and to go towards the path of ma'rifatullah and understanding of Allah. Imam al-Ridha says, oh Nofali, don't worry about me. And oh Nofali, make sure you look at the face of Ma'mun when I answer the people of the Bible from the Bible, and I answer the Jews from the Torah, and I answer the Romans in Latin, and I answer the Zoroastrians in Persian. At that moment, look at the face of Ma'mun. Imam al-Ridha, in this manner, he goes towards the court of Ma'mun. When he goes to the court of Ma'mun, Ma'mun, he calls upon Jatalik. Of course, Jatalik was the head of the Catholics at that time. Jatalik, Ma'mun says to Jatalik, that why don't you discuss and debate with my cousin Ali al-Ridha? Jatalik says that how can I discuss and debate with an individual who doesn't believe in the same book that I believe in? Imam al-Ridha says to him that if I brought proofs from the Old Testament and the New Testament, from the Torah and the Injil, then would you believe what I have to say? He says, absolutely. The Jatalik says to Imam al-Ridha that what do you think of Isa? What do you think of Jesus? Imam al-Ridha says, we believe in the prophethood of Jesus. But we don't believe in any Jesus who rejected the messengership of Rasulullah. Jatalik, he says to Imam al-Rida, then okay, then bring witnesses if you're saying this. Imam al-Rida says, do you know John ad-Dailami, al-Yuhanna ad-Dailami? He says, yes, I know John ad-Dailami. Imam al-Rida says, he testifies that Masih, he said, that there will come a prophet, and that prophet, his name will be Ahmad. You find after that, Imam Rida says, so we believe in Jesus. But there was one shortcoming in Isa. There was one shortcoming in Jesus. At that point, you can imagine what the intention of Jatalik must have been, the head of the Catholics. He says, what shortcoming did our Lord Jesus have? Imam Rida says that he would not pray and he would miss his fast. At that point, Jatalik says, how dare you say that our Lord had shortcomings in prayer and fasting? Imam Rida says to him that if he is a Lord, then who was he praying to and whom was he fasting for? What a reply at that moment. So you find Jatalik after that reply, he didn't have much to say. Imam Rida says to him, why do you believe Jesus is a Lord? Why do you take him as the creator? You find that the Christian, he replies by saying, it's because he brought the dead back to life. A normal human being couldn't do that. He must be divine. So Imam Rida, he shows a principle of logic. He says, okay, if this is your universal principle, that for somebody who brings the dead back to life, he must be a Lord, then anyone who carries this out, they must be a creator in your eyes. When you look within the Bible, it's stated that, for example, that Elijah brought the dead back to life. It stated Ezekiel brought the dead back to life. It stated that Ibrahim had 4 birds. He cut them into pieces. He called upon them. They came back to life. That why don't you take them as Lord as well? You find after that he has no answer. Imam al-Rida, then he turns to Rasul Jalut, the head rabbi. He says, why do you not accept the prophethood of Jesus? He says, it's because Musa showed miracles. We only believe in Musa. Imam al-Rida says, what miracles did he show? He says he had the staff which turned into a snake. He had the luminous hand. Imam al-Rida replies by saying, Isa showed greater miracles. Rasul Jalut says, yes, he showed greater miracles, but we didn't see their miracles. Imam al-Rida says, when did you see the miracles of Musa for you to testify to them? You didn't live in his time period either. And in this manner, Imam al-Rida would have many different discussions with various groups, and if you want to refer to these discussions, you find that they're mentioned in Kitab al-Tawheed of Sheikh al-Suduk, which has been translated into English, and you can refer to the life of Imam al-Rida. A translation of one of the works is in English by Baqir Qarashi, Allama Baqir Qarashi, who was a Alim Din in Najaf al-Ashraf, and many of his works have been translated into English. You can refer to those for further incidents about the life of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida. But Imam al-Rida, as the influence of Imam al-Rida was increasing in the court of Ma'mun, a time it comes that Ma'mun, he decides to poison Imam al-Rida. He put poison within grapes. He places it in front of the Imam. He says that you're forced to eat this at this moment. Imam al-Rida, before he goes to the court of Ma'mun, Imam al-Rida, he said to his companion Abul Salt, he said, Ya Abul Salt, I'm going to the court of Ma'mun and I may not return. Abul Salt, if you see my cloak, my abba on my shoulders, then you know I am fine. But if you see my abba over my head, then you know at that moment your Imam has been poisoned and he's in his final moments. Imam al-Rida, he comes from the court of Ma'mun with his abba over his head. Abul Salt realized that Imam al-Rida has been poisoned. Imam al-Rida would live across from the palace of Ma'mun. It wasn't a long walk. It's stated as Imam al-Ridha was walking to his home, 40 times Imam al-Ridha would sit on the ground from the pain of the poison which was going through the body of Imam al-Ridha. You know, it's stated on a different occasion that when Imam al-Ridha, the poet Di'bal al-Khuzai, comes towards the Imam, Dibal al-Khuzai, he begins to recite poetry. Dibal, he says in this poetry, Madarisu ayatin khalat min tilawatin. He says that the houses in which the Quran was recited is devoid of the recitation of the Quran. He says, Diyaru aliyan wa hamzata wa ja'farin wa sajjadi wal diltafanati. He says the houses of Ali and Sajjad and Hamza and Ja'far, all of these homes have become empty. After that, Debel, he says, Afatimu yabnat al-khair qumi wandubi nujuma samawatin bi ardi falati. He says, O Fatima, stand up and look at your stars which are laying on the plains of the desert. That he was reciting the Musibah of Karbala. After that, he says, وَقَبْرٌ بِكُوفَانٍ وَقَبْرٌ بِبَغْدَادٍ لِنَفْسٍ زَكِيَّةٍ وَأُخْرَى بِطَيْبٍ نَالَهَا صَلَوَاتِ. He begins to say that there is a grave in Kufa and there is a grave in Tus. He begins to say there is a grave in Kufa in Baghdad. After that, Imam al-Ridha says, O Di'bal, can I finish your poetry? That would be tamamu qasidatik. Di'bal says, oh my master, of course you can finish it. Imam al-Ridha, he says, وَقَبْرٌ بِطُوسٍ يَا لَهَا مِن مُصِيبَةٍ. He says, oh Di'bal, there will also be a grave in Tus. The musibah and the difficulties of the one who is buried in that grave will be difficult. Di'bal, he says, oh my master, I don't know any grave in Tus. Imam al-Ridha says, oh Di'bal, I am speaking about my grave, and the moment it comes when I'm poisoned. It's stated when Imam al-Ridha, he stated this. The sister of Imam al-Ridha, Fatima al-Ma'asuma, she falls to the ground with tears in her eyes. But I say one line, I say, oh Fatima, you only heard about the death of your brother. Zainab would watch as Shimmer would sit on the chest of Hussein. To see is different, to hear is different. Imam al-Ridha has been poisoned. It's stated Imam al-Ridha was upon his deathbed. They said to Imam al-Ridha says to his companions, that the one who will bury me is the one who will come from Medina. Imam al-Jawadi comes, he buries Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha. But I say, oh Imam al-Ridha, your son came, your body didn't lay on the plains of Karbala for 3 days. When Imam Zainul Abidin on the 13th of Muharram, he goes to the body of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Tomorrow I'll recite the Masayib of Arbaeen. But the first Zahir of Hussein, the first Zahir of Hussein after the day of Ashura, even before Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, was Imam Zainul Abidin on the 13th of Muharram. When Imam Zainul Abidin, he comes, he sees that the bodies of the Shuhada are scattered throughout the ground. The tribe of Banu Asad is standing there. Imam al-Ridha, he goes, Imam Zainul Abidin, he goes to the body of his father. He says, oh father, after you, they took the hijab of your sister, oh father. Oh father, after you, they hurt your daughters, oh father. Oh father, after you, they put the chains around our necks. After that, Banu Asad, they begin to say, oh captive, we want to bury these individuals. individuals, but how do we bury them? Imam Zainul Abidin says that make one grave for all of the companions. The grave of Habib was made by the tribe of Habib, but the rest of the companions, they made one grave for the companions. As they were burying the companions, Banu Asad, they come to Imam Zainul Abidin. They didn't know it was Imam Zainul Abidin. They say, "Oh captive, there is a body by the Furat. When we pick one side of the body, the other side it falls down. When we pick the other side of the body, the other side of the body it falls down." Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, that is the body of my uncle Abbas. Imam Zainul Abidin himself buried Aba Fadl Abbas. Then after that, Imam Zainul Abidin says, "Oh Banu Asad, I will bury my father." Imam Zainul Abidin, he puts a cloth on the ground. He collects the pieces of Sayyid al-Shuhada. He puts the body of the Imam. You find after that, they said, "Oh captive, there is the body of a young man." Imam Zainul Abidin says, "Bring that body. That is the body of my brother Ali Akbar." Imam Zainul Abidin, he buries Ali Akbar by the feet of his father. After that, it's stated that when he puts the body of Sayyid al-Shuhada in the ground, the Maqatil, they state, at that point, they heard a voice from the cut body of Hussein. That voice, it's a Tifli, Tifli, that where is the infant? Where is my infant? Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, "Oh Banu Asad, where is the 6-month child?" They bring the body of Abdullah Radi. They bring the body of Ali Asghar. They bury Ali Asghar on the chest of Hussein. Imam Zainul Abidin, he writes on the grave, "هذا قبر أبي عبد الله الذي قتل غريب وعطشانا لعنة الله للقوم الظالمين." Ya Allah, we ask through the right of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, wherever the followers of Ahlul Bayt are in difficulty, help them. Wherever they're sick and ailing, particularly in this time of a global pandemic, Ya Allah, give them cure, give them shafa. We pray for the intercession of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, and we pray for the tawfiq and the divine guidance to benefit from the seerah of Ahlul Bayt and from the seerah of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha in particular. على ربنا تقبل منا إنك
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, 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 तुरबते बाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, इस कदर मारे तमाचे हाय शिमर बदकार ने, इस कदर मारे तमाचे हाय शिमर बदकार ने, حشر تک وہ موت بابا کی رلائی ہو گئی تربت باری سکینہ سے جدائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی مومنوں منہ کو چھپا لو نوچ ڈالو سر کے بال مومنوں منہ کو چھپا لو نوچ ڈالو سر کے بال سر بر ہیں نہ دشت میں زہرا کی جائی ہو گئی تربت باری سکینہ سے جدائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی اصغر معصوم کا وہ مسکرانا موت پر اصغر معصوم کا وہ مسکرانا موت پر دیکھ کر شرمندہ دریا کی ترائی ہو گئی تربت باری سکینہ سے جدائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے جدائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی سر کٹا گلزار جب مشکل کشا کے لال کا سر کٹا گلزار جب مشکل کشا کے لال کا تا قیامت دین کی مشکل کشائی ہو گئی تربت باری سکینہ سے جدائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی مومنوں منہ کو چھپا لو نوچ ڈالو سر کے بال مومنوں منہ کو چھپا لو نوچ ڈالو سر کے بال سر پر ہے نہ دشت میں صحرا کی جائی ہو گئی تربت باری سکینہ سے جدائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی کربلا والوں کی زندہ سے رہائی ہو گئی یا حسین یا حسین حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
متوجہ زیارت السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ السلام علیک یا حبیب اللہ السلام علیک یا خیرت خلق اللہ السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك وعلى جدك وأبيك. السلام عليك وعلى أمك وأخيك. السلام عليك وعلى الأئمة من ذريتك وبنيك. صلى الله عليك وعلى أخيك أبي الفضل العباس وعلى أختك زينب وعلى ولديك العليين الشهيدين وعلى المستشهدين بين يديك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا مغيث الشيعة والزوار في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك يا أنيس النفوس. السلام عليك أيها المدفون بأرض طوس. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا والتحية والثناء. السلام عليك وعلى آبائك السبعة وأبنائك الأربعة. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتن الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليك يا مظهر الإيمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا قاطع البرهان. السلام عليك يا إمام زماننا هذا. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Please recite Surah Fatiha for the marhumin. Their names are displayed on your screen. رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات.